Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. I'm your host, Don Kleppen. Thanks for clicking on the show. If it's your first time here, this is a show where I'm taking a look at all things cannabis. I'm a journalist in Chicago. I do news reporting on the radio as well as traffic, and I've been a personal cannabis user for a while. And I decided to take that experience in newsrooms and in broadcast settings and take a more investigative approach or at least chronicle in a journalistic fashion the change that we're seeing regarding cannabis being slowly normalized into our society in a way that alcohol and tobacco and some other substances have been for a long time. I'd like to start by thanking you for the ratings and reviews. Those have been pouring in different ways for the last couple of weeks, and I really appreciate the outpouring of support. If you haven't yet, you can use whatever app or platform that you're using to listen to this right now. There's a ratings function in there. Spotify, Apple, iHeart, etc. Anything at all. Subscribe, rate, review. That always helps me out a lot, and thank you so much to those who have done that already. I also wanted to share with you right off the bat here, there is an exciting new function that I've been toying with the last couple of weeks. You may have noticed it, maybe not, but check this out next time you have a moment. If you look at the description, the writing underneath the episode title, again, whichever platform you are listening to this on right now, if you click on the individual episode and check out the description, go underneath where the guest info is and what you can hear about the episode, and you'll notice that there are two links, a question or comments link, and then support the show. The question or comments link takes you to a newer service for podcasts called Gallus FM, G-A-L-A-S, and basically clicking this link will take you to Gallus, and there you can leave a question, comment, or even a voice message, anything to do with cannabis or the show. If you have a question about something I've talked about, if you have a question for a specific guest that I've had on, if you have a comment or some feedback about anything that's come up on the show, all you have to do is click that question or comment link, and you'll easily be able to leave that just by typing it into a box, and I'll see it, and it might make it onto the show. Either way, I very much look forward to engaging with you on the topic as we roll forward with the show. And on that note, let's kick this episode off properly and play the open. Here we go. Listener, if you don't know, that is an original work right there. That is my friend Yusu Kim, who goes by the musician moniker Good Son, and check out his Instagram page or his website. He puts out great music on the regular and is performing all the time, so if you like that, definitely check out more of his stuff. Let's get in now to the News Joint Wrap, brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And let's start with some relatively big news, I thought, for Illinois. Cannabis smell no longer probable cause for vehicle search. This is some relatively recent news. An appellate court ruling in Illinois' 3rd District delivered a judgment that the smell of burnt cannabis alone did not provide an officer with probable cause to search the vehicle. That's from Associate Judge Daniel Dalton of the Whiteside County Court. This all stems from a traffic stop that happened in May of 2020. An officer conducted the stop after the driver disobeyed traffic laws. The officer approached the vehicle and smelled a strong odor of burnt cannabis emitting from inside. You can see where this is going. The officer searched the vehicle, and obviously this made it into this court case here. Now, this is an interesting part I wanted to make sure to include. The state argued that the 1985 Supreme Court case of People v. Stout, which found that the odor of burnt cannabis alone was enough to search the vehicle, was still controlling case law. The defense in this case argued that, quote, since the legalization of cannabis, it should be treated the same as alcohol, which requires more than just the odor of an alcoholic beverage for probable cause to search a vehicle. The defense made note that the odor of burnt cannabis can linger on someone and that there's no smoke or other evidence to suggest that cannabis would be in the vehicle. Moreover, the officer did not deploy a canine, discuss the defendant's impairment, or do any field sobriety testing. The key point is this, and I'm quoting from the decision now, "We hold that the smell of the burnt cannabis without any corroborating factors is not enough to establish probable cause to search the vehicle." And then goes on a little bit more, but says here, "Thus the Supreme Court's holding in Stout is no longer applicable to post-legalization fact patterns." So just something to keep in mind going forward. Thought that was definitely worth sharing with you here. IDOA allows infusers to manufacture vape cartridges. This one also came out in the last couple of weeks. The Illinois Department of Agriculture and the Division of Cannabis Regulation put out a statement clarifying legalities for newly licensed infusers and their ability to produce their own cannabis concentrates and make those into vape cartridges. Both were prohibited. Recently, though, IDOA released an updated version of the statement which included more wording to eliminate one of those prohibitions. And the new wording, or interpreting it, in that statement allows for licensed infusers to now manufacture concentrate into vape cartridges by clarifying how oil vape cartridges are defined in the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. The adjustment hinges on the word combustion, which is interesting mainly because of my guest, who you'll be hearing from in just a moment, listener. He talks quite a bit about combustion because of the vaporizing devices that he's got on the market right now. The article goes much further in specifying the specific language in the statement from those departments. It talks about the old versus the new, and oil vape cartridges versus combustion, and just more and more details. So if you're interested, definitely check that article out on IllinoisNewsJoint.com. And the final piece of the wrap this week, New Era Initiative raises awareness for breast cancer. This has to do with an initiative for a month-long fundraiser this year. New Era, N-U-E-R-A, Cannabis announced its annual initiatives to raise awareness for breast cancer. Proceeds of this fundraising event will benefit 3 locally run organizations in Illinois that serve the needs of women and families affected by breast cancer. This is for the month of October. New Era's 6 dispensary locations in Illinois will be donating $1 per unit sold of special edition cannabis flower pre-rolls and double joint infused pre-rolls. They're also donating net revenue from the sales of Doobies for Boobies wristbands and pink New Era logo pins. Proceeds will go to Gilda's Club, Pink Heels Peoria, and Pink Heels Central Illinois. Pink Heels are best known for their fleet of pink fire trucks and police cars. They'll be on site at 3 different New Era retail dispensary locations on Saturday, October 1st, which is this upcoming weekend from when the episode comes out, to help support the Doobies for Boobies launch. I'm going to go ahead and try and get some of those wristbands myself, just because that's a worthy cause to support. And you can find out more about New Era's initiative for the month of October and some of the past giving that they've done, which has benefited these programs and organizations in Illinois. And you can find out more details about those stories that I mentioned earlier in the wrap, and more about any events you might care to check out related to cannabis in and around Illinois, all at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. For my strain of the week, and this week, this is another nighttime smoke. I've had a little bit of scotch, honestly, listener, and before I'm recording this, and I'm sitting down now with the strain of cannabis that I purchased recently. Got this from the Wrigleyville Sunnyside location, Sunnyside Dispensaries in Illinois, and this is a 93 Boys product. This is a recent strain, cannabis producer, a new line, a new license holder, recently anyway, that has started selling around Illinois. It's backed by the rapper Vic Mensa. I went to a launch party of theirs last month, and they have some really great product. They have some great vape product as well, but this 93 Boys 8th that I got from Sunnyside is Jet Fuel. This is a cross strain from between Aspen OG and High Country Diesel. That is the crossover that gets Jet Fuel from 93 Boys. This particular batch was harvested July 15th, packaged on August 1st. I got this just within the last couple of weeks here, so not too bad, and I definitely didn't feel like this was dried out. It came out frosty, it came out pungent, and I put it in an airtight container right away. I usually like to do that to preserve the cannabis as best I can, and I did the same with this jet fuel here. The terpenes that are listed on the back of the package: caryophyllene, limonene, myrcene, and humulene, and I decided to take a look around this week and found that there is a terpene chart on homegrowncannabisco.com. Listener, if you don't know, I did a crossover episode on Homegrown Cannabis's podcast with Chronic, Derek LaRose, a great guy, and we had a great conversations about cannabis. Check out his show, their YouTube channel. Just search Homegrown Cannabis, either for podcasts or YouTube, and I'll pop up on there. I'm going to release my interview of Chronic within the next few weeks here, but either way, Homegrown has this wonderful terpene chart that I'm looking at right now, and going through some of these on the back of the 93 Boys jet fuel package here. Caryophyllene has a woody, spicy, peppery aroma, and the effects are stress relieving. Myrcene, earthy, musky, and herbal aroma with relaxing and sedating. They list limonene, fresh lemony, and elevating and stress busting effects. And humulene, woody, earthy, herbal, and then anti-inflammatory are the top listed effects on the Homegrown Cannabis Co. chart for terpenes. And smelling this right now, I kind of ground a bunch of this up before I'm gonna inhale it here. And in the grinder, I am definitely getting both the woody and the earthy part of it definitely comes through. The herbal part a little bit, I suppose, but certainly that woody, earthy bit. And on the taste side, I do get a little bit of that spice pepper of the caryophyllene that's on this chart here. So this definitely checks out for the jet fuel from 93 Boys. Those terpenes are certainly there in the odor, the aroma, and the effects. I have to agree with that. And I've been enjoying this out of a bowl, but also in a new, fun, interesting way. And you're going to hear a lot more about this in just a moment from my guest this week, who has invented this product and many more, and he has them available now for purchase. And I'm really just excited because after trying this myself, I have to recommend it to everybody who will listen. Anyone who considers themselves a cannabis aficionado, anybody who is interested in consuming cannabis in a form that preserves the taste and terpene profile that you're looking for, that combustion just tends to burn away. And my guest will have an interesting metaphor for sort of explaining how that all works and whatnot. But basically, he has invented a line of vaporizers, and that is what I'm holding in my hand right now. This is a bee vaporizer, courtesy of the company DynaVap. And my guest, George, who you'll hear from in just a moment, was kind enough to send me one of these. And I've been using it, and I am just so hooked on this right now because it is a small, easy-to-use vaporizer, and I've never, sort of had one that is as simplistic as this. And the way that it preserves the taste, the terpene, and also still kind of hits relatively, I don't want to say it hits hard the way that, a bong hit or a massive bowl hit does. Anybody who's tried both knows that there's a difference between vaping and smoking. And smoking just hits the lungs harder. It's more of a punch on your esophagus, on your lungs, and it sort of pinches harder. And that is something that's, I think people who are into the smoking, that's something that you miss when you're switching over to a vaporizer. And what I have found is that using this bee, I still feel that pinch, and I still get some real strong clouds of the vapor. It's not like a bong hit cloud. It's not like some triple distilled bubbler that, you can just fill your diaphragm and your lungs and you're expanding. It's not like that. And again, this is a tiny handheld piece. But that being said, this just has some excellent functionality to it, and it does preserve the flavor in such a way that that I have never experienced before with smoking anything, but it gives me, a longtime smoker, it gives me the satisfaction in my lungs of knowing that I've taken a good hit. But I'm also tasting something that is much, much closer to what I smell in this grinder right now. When I was just talking about those terpenes and I was describing that woody, earthy, herbal scent of these different terpenes. You know, when you smoke that, you burn the plant matter, you cannot help but, just like burnt toast or burnt bacon, when it's burnt, it affects the taste profile. It changes the makeup and it changes your perception of that taste and all of that. And that is the same when you're smoking stuff. This vaporizer is just so smooth and has been so fun for me that I wanted to mention it to everybody. And I'm going to record a short video of this so that I can kind of show exactly how it works, because I think once you hear this little click here, you may want to see what it is that I'm working with. But I'll do that sometime later in this week and share it to the show social pages. But right now, I wanted to let you know that I am hitting this, the jet fuel from 93 Boys. I'm hitting this through the B vaporizer, courtesy of George at DynaVap. And this is something that I'm highly, highly recommending everybody go and try if you have a chance. Lovely. Listener, my guest today has a very exciting line of products to talk about. He's a cannabis entrepreneur, and he specializes in some vaporizing devices, battery-free dry herb vaporizers, and they provide exceptional flavor, and I'm very interested to kind of talk a little more about them. Listener, please welcome George Breiwa of DynaVap. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Don. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I usually just kind of like to get started with these just by getting to know you a little bit. How did cannabis first get on your radar?
It was a while back after I got out of the military. I was finally in a position where it's like, I can give this a try without the risk of any significant consequences. And I found right out the gate that, this is rather interesting. But doggone it, the smoke is kind of harsh.
Yeah, I can get that. And I assume that sort of led you to your to discovering vaporizers, I would say, right?
It really did, almost from the very beginning. It was probably the single biggest detriment that was in my mind anytime I would contemplate, consuming a little bit of cannabis, and that's that it just burns the back of my throat or it hurts my lungs. And so I found myself almost preferentially only consuming through water. And then even back in early 2000s, just messing around with trying to build a vaporizer, because I'd heard about these things, but they weren't really commonplace back then.
Right. I remember kind of around like 2010, 2012-ish, like I remember getting some forms of vaporizers, and they were all sort of the same. You only saw a handful, a small amount of designs for what options were available out there. And how did that journey go for you in terms of trying to build your own? That I can only imagine. How did you kind of start with that?
Well, it was really kind of I'm going to call it a half-hearted attempt at making a janky proof of concept that kind of worked, but not really well. Where I wired up parts from a cigarette lighter in a car to a power supply and a little rheostat to see if I could control it, and put a little glass jar over the top. And yeah, it kind of worked, but it wasn't what I was looking for, and so it just kind of went on the shelf for a few years.
Man, that still sounds, I have to say, that still sounds very impressive. Just even that kind of rigging up those parts. To be able to MacGyver a functioning vaporizer, I'm just personally very impressed by that. So how did you go from there to DynaVap? You got a bunch of products here. What did that stretch look like for you?
Okay, so a few years went by, and the vast majority of any cannabis that I consumed during that time was always through water. So I played around with making some water pieces, that sort of stuff. Even contemplated getting into some glass work because it's kind of interesting. And then out of the blue, my neighbor shows me this vaporizer that he bought, and he must have stopped at a head shop or something. And I'm looking at it, it's like, well, this is interesting. It's made by a company in Ireland called Portasol, and they specialize in making butane-powered soldering irons. So kind of an interesting company that already had some experience in making butane-powered things that get hot, which is effectively what a vaporizer is. And he showed it to me, he let me try it out. I was like, now that is what I've been looking for. Nice, right?
Right.
To be able to really finally experience a terpene profile that's more in line with what I'm smelling before the flower gets lit on fire and now it's smoke. And it really started to bring the whole picture together for me. It's like, okay, I like the way it smells when it's fresh. I actually generally like the way it smells when someone else is smoking it. But as soon as the smoke hits my tongue, it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't taste anything like it smells. It's barely reminiscent, if anything. And it was always such a disappointment when I would, get the taste of smoke and the harshness in my throat and my lungs. It's like, doggone it. But this vapor coming from this vaporizer, now this is nice. It's not hot, it's not harsh, and it's just as effective.
Man.
And it was just kind of a threshold moment for me, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing my research, and I started looking around, and this is 2012. And what I come to find is that there just weren't many options on the market, and the few that were out there, anything that was of any decent quality that had any reviews was generally very expensive, more than $200, and many of them over $3. And if it had a battery, it didn't last very long. So I ended up buying the exact same model that he had, thinking that, butane's kind of nice because it recharges in seconds and it doesn't contain electronic components. Because even though we love our electronics in our society, you look, they're everywhere.
Right.
And they're extraordinarily useful and can do some amazing things. Electronic things just tend to be, prone to failure. And they don't tend to last more than a few years. There's exceptions. We got some smartphones that might last 3 or 4, maybe 5. Some high-quality laptops, you might get 7 to 10 if you really push it.
Yeah.
But then you just start to have breakdowns, even if it's the software, firmware, whatever it might be.
Right.
So I really developed a very quick appreciation for the elegant simplicity of a vaporizer that is not reliant upon electronics. And that was what this device was, the iolite. It was effectively a little tank of butane, a little igniter like you have on your gas grill, and it utilized a form of combustion called catalytic reduction. That is what you see in some of the portable propane heaters like people use, in our part of the world, like in the ice shanties or in the deer shacks. You get this little area that just kind of glows orange and you don't really see flames, but the fuel just comes across the surface, usually with a precious metal catalyst like platinum or palladium.
Right.
And when it hits, when hydrocarbons hit a surface of a metal like this, they literally just break apart, combined with oxygen in what's called flameless combustion. And this allows for the use of butane as your energy source in these vaporizers.
Wow.
Problem is, they're expensive, and they're big, and they take a little while to heat up. So this device, I think I paid about $300 for it. And in general, they'd say it'd heat up in 2 minutes, but it was more like 3 or 4. And what I noticed is that I started setting a timer on my watch. I'd turn it on, I'd walk away, and I'd just distract myself with something else while this thing is warming up. And I'd come back in the room, and the first thing I'd notice is, there's all my terpenes in the air, right?
Right.
And it still worked, and it was much better than combustion. But this really led me to, okay, there's something missing from this experience.
Right.
And so I was sitting down in my basement with a few people that I like spending time with, and we were sharing this vaporizer. And a thought just kind of crossed my mind as we're talking about it. It's like, how difficult could it really be to make a vaporizer? And that I think, is the beginning of the journey, right? This is the question. Because in concept, what is a vaporizer? Well, it's nothing more than an oven and a straw. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fascinating way of thinking of it, though. I obviously, like, never sort of conceptually visualized it that way. But that's fantastic, yeah.
It's all it is. I mean, what's an oven? An oven is a space that is heated to a desirable or adjustable temperature. It heats up to that point and it maintains it, right?
Right.
You can adjust it. So the fun thing is, when you use this oven analogy, the reality is you could put your cannabis in your oven at home and it would effectively perform the same function as a vaporizer.
Right, if you could somehow like work a crazy straw in, like some, pathway into the oven, and if you had your cannabis in there and you could somehow like just use the straw to get the air out, that could be the thing.
Exactly that. So here I sit. Now, how can I do this? And as I would say a lifelong tinkerer, I just tend to have things around me just because I like to take things apart. I like to put things together.
Sure.
And I found this really interesting resource here in the Madison area called UW Swap Shop, which is a place where a lot of the surplus from the university just gets basically sold off or auctioned off. Desks, furniture, and my favorite, lab equipment. And so I had a box of glass borosilicate vials, those screw top test tubes, right?
Gotcha.
So I was like, okay, what if I grab one of these glass vials? That could be my oven because I can heat that up with a flame. I just need a straw now to suck the vapor out. So I did what any, cannabis aficionado has probably done at least once in the past, and that is I took a Bic pen and I disassembled it.
Yeah.
Because Bic pens contain some very useful parts.
Yeah.
In this situation, I wasn't looking for the poker so much as I was looking for the straw. And so here we had a vaporizer that comprised 3 parts: a borosilicate glass vial, the tube of the Bic pen for a straw, and a lighter. And so I dropped a little cannabis inside the glass tube. I heated it up until I started to see a little bit of vapor form through the glass, and then I sucked it out with a straw. And this was for sure an epiphany moment.
Did you, and you've touched on this a little bit through the story here, but you feel strongly that vaporizing preserves the flavor in a way that combustion with just the flame torching the plant matter, it just can't do, right?
I very much agree with that statement, Don. And I can give a really interesting analogy that might help it resonate with other people.
Sure, please.
And so it kind of goes like this. Do you like cookies, Don?
I love them. I do, admittedly.
And fresh baked are the best, right?
100%. Can't beat it.
Especially when you're in the area where they're being baked and you have that wonderful aroma of fresh baked cookies.
Yeah.
So, if we think about it like this, when you vaporize cannabis, effectively you're baking your cookies. When you light it on fire, you're burning them.
Oh man, that's just, I laugh because now I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to light it up, in a combustion sense and not think of that, just torching a perfectly good batch of cookies, and it sucks, but the way it makes perfect sense to me, and I see the sense in that. And when you said before cannabis aficionado, this vaporizing seems to me like akin to wine drinkers, elevating their palate and being able to kind of suss out the nuance of flavor. And that's part of the pleasure of drinking that, if that's sort of your thing, or as you were saying, something delicious like cookies as well. But that flavor profile, the taste, which is one of the pleasures of cannabis as well, it does make so much sense that you can't enjoy that flavor if you're just taking a flame right to it versus toasting it and kind of baking it appropriately to preserve that. And it seems to me that's kind of what DynaVap is all about.
It's exactly that. And so I can kind of further the whole conceptualization here, because it's just kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
So if we use your wine analogy, for example, if you talk to someone that actually cares about wine, they will likely have a pretty significant preference in terms of the temperature that their wine is served at and the shape of the glass that it's consumed from.
Right.
And why is this? It has to do with an incredibly important attribute of enjoying substances like this, and that is the aromatic parts of it.
Right,
okay?
Right.
So when you put your red wine in a large glass so you can aerate it, so you can create the aroma, and if you just visualize, you've got this glass of red wine in your hand, and you're about to take a sip. Well, what happens right before you take that sip?
Get a nice sniff of
You sniff it.
Yeah.
Okay. No different than a nice brandy or a whiskey, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is why whiskey or brandy is served in a snifter, right?
Right.
So we can incorporate the sensations in our nose, and we can start to dissect all of the intricate aromas of this is sometimes intricately crafted beverage.
Right. And
cannabis, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, which again is makes sense as well, because I know that a large part of our taste comes from the olfactory nerves. It's smell and the absorbing the odor of what we're consuming it informs our brain of what to expect in terms of a taste profile.
100%. And so here's where it gets super interesting, and that's when we think about cannabis. Cannabis is likely one of the most aromatic plants that any of us encounter on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Okay? It's extraordinarily aromatic, and it's also extremely recognizable. You're not going to walk into a room where someone's just taken a puff and not notice.
Right. You can't even walk down like a city block where it's happening and not notice typically, right?
No, it's incredibly recognizable. So once we then shift from, okay, someone opens this beautiful jar of well-grown, just beautiful cannabis. And the first thing that anyone that I've ever encountered that appreciates cannabis, what do?
Go right for the sniff.
Smell it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the first thing that you do when someone is sharing some cannabis with you. It's almost like introducing yourself. Oh,
right.
Hi, I'm so-and-so. I am a new strain of cannabis you haven't encountered before. Take a sniff. And so it gets the whole process started. But how often is it that you smell this cannabis and then you light it up, that you can detect all of this, the similarities and the analogs from what you're smelling and what you're tasting? There's some there, but it's generally quite a contrast.
Right.
And I can say it's similar to when you walk into the coffee shop, and the coffee shop just smells absolutely delightful. And you're like, yeah, I want a glass of whatever it is I'm smelling. And they say, well, this is our XXY roast, right? And you get just a cup of coffee, not with all the sugar and all the other artificial sweeteners and everything else that really amps it up. I'm talking, if you just smell coffee and then you taste coffee as a liquid extraction, there's a dramatic difference. Because what you've done is you've done a solvent extraction using water as your carrier fluid, okay? And so you're not extracting all the aromatics, and it's just not the same. When we use a vaporizer, we're doing something extremely different, and that is we're using nothing but heat to evaporate the active compounds and the flavor compounds and concentrate them. So just like the fresh baked cookies tend to taste extremely similar to the way that they smell, when you utilize a good quality vaporizer for your cannabis, what you're going to find is that the flavor profile, especially the first puff, before you've removed any of the active compounds of the terpenes, just the first bit that's coming off as you're bringing it up to temperature, tends to taste extremely similar to the way that it smells.
Wow. That is just sort of going along with you on that journey there. I mean, it's so compelling that way. Anybody who appreciates cannabis, I think, would be sort of compelled to try and find something that could preserve the flavor in that sort of way. And on that note, I kind of want to just like go through a couple products that DynaVap has to offer. And listener, I just want to spell it DynaVap.com. You can go and check it out. And I'm looking at some of the stuff that they got here right now. George, I'm curious, what was the first product, or what do you think is sort of like the cover shot of the brochure of DynaVap? What's the product that you're sort of, that was like the launching ship, let's say?
So that product we don't make anymore because it wasn't what we really wanted to be known for. So the first product that I made was actually an evolution of the glass vial. It was a glass tube. As that glass tube evolved into something, with the intent of making it more simple for any person that doesn't understand physics, or even one that does, to consistently and reliably be able to utilize a simple flame or anything that's hot to use nothing but heat to extract the active compounds from their cannabis is where kind of the signature component of all our devices came from, and that's our cap. And our cap is this tiny little piece of very thin metal that contains a thermostat. And when I say tiny, it's 10 millimeters in diameter and about 27 millimeters long, and weighs less than a gram.
That is tiny.
And this tiny little thing allows for any person that has one of our products to utilize nearly any available heat source to basically heat up their oven to a very known, consistent, and reliable temperature, and then using just a little bit of suction, extract all of the active and desirable flavor compounds off of their favorite strain of cannabis.
Nice.
So that first unit made out of glass, they tended to break. They weren't very durable. We wanted something more durable. And so we figured out ways that we could, create a thermal break or a separation between the oven and the rest of the device so it wouldn't get so hot. And anyone that's ever used a one-hitter knows that after that first hit, the thing's hot.
Oh,
after
yeah.
the second one, it's very uncomfortable.
Totally.
And
Can't really pass that to somebody in good conscience.
It doesn't work nice.
Right.
But that's one of the hallmarks of our devices is, although you've got your oven that can be operating at temperatures well above 400 degrees Fahrenheit, the part that hits your mouth and the place where your fingers go tends to stay very comfortable temperature.
That's fascinating.
And so if you were to go to our website, we just launched a product actually about a week ago. And this product is probably one of the most exciting products we brought to market in about 5 years, because we've taken all of our knowledge and experience that we've gained over the last 6 years of making these types of devices and tried to distill it down into the simplest vaporizer we could possibly design. And it is so fun, Don, because we've been able to refine a vaporizer down to 5 total parts.
I'm just wondering, I don't know if it is this the bee?
Correct, it is the bee.
This thing looks really cool. I have to say, listener, definitely worth checking out right now. I can see it as a part of a couple of different bundles on the site as well, but just the standalone device of the bee itself, there's kind of like a black colored handle, and you can see, I believe, the cap that you were referring to, George, kind of at the tip end of it. This looks really cool and extremely simple.
It is extremely simple. For the people that are listening, I can give us a quick rundown in terms of how this works.
Yeah,
so
please.
Our little temperature indicating cap, it's held on with a couple little captivations or detents so it doesn't fall off. So it just pulls right off. And then what you're going to find under the cap is a tiny little extraction chamber. This is actually one of the smallest extraction chambers out of any vaporizer currently on the market, but don't let that deceive you. And this is where I would actually direct you or anyone else that's listening to check out one of the largest communities that we have, and that's on Reddit. So if you just go to Reddit and look up DynaVap, you'll find our community there. That community will provide you a whole lot of additional information from people that aren't from our company. People out there that love cannabis and also utilize our product and are familiar with it. What you'll likely see time and time again is that when people start using our devices, the amount of cannabis that they consume goes down substantially.
Interesting. And you mentioned the community there, George, the Reddit community, and I just want to take this opportunity to send a shout out. Someone reached out, I won't name just in case they don't want to be named, but someone reached out and just let me know how much they enjoyed your products from DynaVap, and were just so glowing in their review that's what led me to go to the website in the first place and kind of reach out to you to set up this interview and to kind of share it with more people. So you're right on the money, and I can see on Reddit right now the DynaVap community as well. This is your products have gotten people pretty excited. I can say that already.
Yeah, it's been a pretty exciting moment for me, Don, over the past couple of years, watching this community grow and also watching how much positivity that there is in this community. And that's another thing that we really try to do our best to nurture, because I feel like we as a company would not be anywhere near where we are at if it weren't for the sharing of our product throughout the cannabis community. And it's such a beautiful thing where you'll just see examples of people that are struggling and how others in the community will help them out, will pick them up, and in some cases some community members sending other community members devices and product for whatever reason. People having things stolen or damaged or lost or whatever it might be. There's just a tremendous amount of positive energy going on in this community as we are all almost like rediscovering cannabis. It's such an interesting moment, at least for me, to watch all this happening.
I'm right there with you, George. I feel that regularly. I just, this is, admittedly, I'm still kind of in the early stages of this show, but the few months I've been doing it, and also, just being a personal cannabis user and the community itself, I've been, as I mentioned on the show, like it's sort of a 15-year, around that point journey for me, and watching it move to where it is now, these last few years, the excitement and the camaraderie around cannabis, and what's even more encouraging is kind of, as you said, how people have each other's backs, how people are wanting to be there for each other, and then they are. There's so much about what's happening with the cannabis movement now that's just inspiring, I think, just to see the kind of good nature that you can see from humanity all around, and it's really manifesting itself in cannabis.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
So, Don, to use this device, back to the beginning, we take the cap off. It just pulls right off. You see the small little oven or chamber there. You can break just a little bit of cannabis and put it right in there, almost like a one-hitter. Grinding is not needed, but it certainly changes the experience. From there, we put the cap back on because this is a vaporizer. It's not a smoking device. Although you can smoke in it, if you really want to have that true terpene profile, you put the cap back on and use a lighter or your whatever heat source you have available, and you heat the side of this cap. And you can reference videos, things like that, and see how it works. And what happens is there's a couple of thermostats that are built into this cap that will click very noticeably, somewhat loudly, and you'll actually be able to feel it in your fingers when it happens, so you can use the device even in a loud environment like a concert and still know, my device is ready. The timer's gone off on my cookies. And then you just bring it to your lips and take a little puff.
Wow. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, George. I did see a video that sort of indicated the click that you're talking about when the appropriate heat level has been reached when, you're toasting the cap there. That click is audible, but it's really cool to know that you can feel it in the handle as well, because that, as you said, in a loud environment, that seems really, really cool. I also want to, just because I think that this is an interesting thing, it's functional as like a basic one-hitter too. If somebody were so inclined for whatever reason, you could just smoke through it like a normal tube as well.
Yes, and it is also compatible with concentrates. So we do make a little accessory called a DynaCoil that is a single piece of kind of highly engineered titanium that you can heat it up, you can dip it in your concentrates and soak up whatever type of concentrate you like, put the cap on, heat it until it clicks, and it can function almost like a dab rig all-in-one.
Wow. That is incredibly fascinating, and I just want to go back to all the while keeping the sort of intense heat away from your fingers and your mouth on like a pretty small, metallic piece. These are very, very cool, and I definitely encourage people to check out DynaVap.com and look at some of these products. George, thank you again for stopping by. I just wanted to jump into these quick hits questions if you're game for these. Are you game?
Perfect. Love to.
All right, cool. First one I usually start with people. Quick hit is, are you a morning bird or a night owl?
Night.
Night owl. Right on.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, and then let's see. Favorite cuisine, like if you're having a special meal, birthday, or a celebratory dinner, where's a restaurant or what's a meal that you definitely want to hit?
Well, I'm feeling like Thai today, so we'll say that.
Thai, yeah. I love red curry duck if I can, if I'm at a Thai place. I'm definitely into something like that for sure. Drug of choice, meaning like your daily thing. You mentioned coffee before. I sort of maybe, I don't know if you're into that, but wine, beer, like what is kind of a daily thing for you?
That's a fun one. So I definitely like to have a little bit of cannabis most days, usually in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. But I find that I've really kind of backed off on alcohol and even coffee. And I find that also there's some other drinks that are made out of some other herbs that are really catching my attention, like say kava kava and kana, if you're familiar with those.
No, I'm not. What are those like? I'd love to check them out though, if I can.
So kava kava is an extract from a root that's common to the South Pacific. It tends to have a very nice calming effect. You can actually buy various things that contain kava kava, even on Amazon. Kana is also an extract from a root, but this one's from Africa. It's a succulent, and it also tends to have a calming effect. But in addition to that, it tends to just give you kind of a generally good feeling of, I feel good. I'm kind of happy. It's not real strong, but it tends to help pick you up a little bit if you're maybe feeling just a little bit off or down.
Nice. Yeah, those sound great. I'm definitely going to take a look for those. Those both, kava kava and kana, was that right?
Yes.
Got it. Yeah, those sound really cool. Definitely into some happy drinks because, man, I love coffee. I say this all the time. I'm into it. I love coffee and cannabis, but there are times in an afternoon where I feel like the coffee I had is making me a little angry or irritable or something. And
fun little tip here, Don. Your DynaVap device is actually really fun to use with coffee as well. Because keep in mind, this is not just a cannabis vaporizer. This is a thermal extraction device. It's a tool that allows you to selectively extract compounds from effectively any type of biomass. So, a little bit of coffee in here, well, it will give you an experience that you may have never had in the past, and that is, it will taste, I'm going to say 90 to 95% like your coffee smells.
So basically you're vaping the coffee grounds then?
No different than you would your cannabis. And because we're just effectively releasing the aromatics from the coffee and concentrating them and sending them right through a straw into your mouth, you will be tasting what you are smelling.
Wow.
It's delightful.
Yeah, I'm sold. I cannot wait to try that. That sounds amazing. Okay, next quick hit here. Music. Any group or band or style if you're trying to get jazzed up or even maybe at the end of a day and you're in the car by yourself trying to unwind, what do you put on?
Well, I don't know if this makes me a little bit odd or different, but I really like EDM.
EDM, yeah.
Yeah, especially music without lyrics. I really appreciate music without lyrics. I like the electronic music, and when I'm trying to focus and get something done, I want to have the music in the background. I don't want to have a TV anywhere near me because they're really distracting, and I'll just focus on what I'm doing.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's I get it with the EDM too, up tempo and just kind of the beats going there to keep the energy up. But no lyrics is really helpful for concentration. I totally think that preserves the focus. And then final quick hit here, movie or TV. What's something that I know you were just saying when you're getting stuff done, TV away, but anything when you're in your leisure time or if it's a Sunday and you're kind of just killing an hour. What's something you'll put on?
Well, I've been enjoying Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, and if I can find any other programming on psychedelics or drugs or anything along those lines, I'm just fascinated by psychoactive substances.
Same. I totally. I was having a dinner with a friend last night. We were talking about DMT, and I haven't tried it myself. He has, and I was I'm right there with you. Psychedelics and some of the research that's being done too, showing what their capabilities are in terms of brain health is very exciting.
It's incredibly exciting, and it's a massive relief for me to see that the research is finally being done, even though so many people, or I shouldn't say so many, a number of people tried extraordinarily hard and took extraordinary measures to make it extremely difficult to do the research.
Oh yeah, it sort of overlaps with the cannabis thing too. I always talk about this manufactured misconception of the 1900s where, there are all these people, we had this reefer madness, we had all this marketing and this advertising, this sort of driven stuff happening to try and turn people against these things and paint them with a very, evil negative brush. And I agree, it's an exciting time now to see that there's legit research being done, and what they're finding is it's just incredibly exciting. Looks like it's a bright future if we can, start utilizing these things properly.
Well, the beautiful thing is they are getting utilized, and I don't think it's stopping.
Agreed, yeah. That just makes the future a whole hell of a lot brighter, and I'm very excited about that too. And I just want to say I'm excited to see what happens with DynaVap as well. George Breiwa, creator of DynaVap, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Really love the products that you've got here, and just sharing your journey with us and sort of what drove you to create these products. I think it's not hard to see why everyone is so excited in the community about what you're making, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing where it goes and hopefully having you on again in the future.
I look forward to it, Don. I appreciate your time.
All right, cool. You have a great day.
Yes, you too.
And there it is. Listener, you can check out more of George's great products and find out more about how they work at DynaVap.com, and as George mentioned, on the Reddit community as well. I'm going to share the links to the website, DynaVap.com, and I'll share a link to the Reddit community as well on the show's social pages. And as I mentioned, I'll take a video using the bee vaporizer as well, because, man, this thing really is sweet, and the flavor preservation that George was talking about, now that I've had a chance to try this thing, it is legitimate. It really does. What you smell out of the grinder, or even just opening the jar, the way that this preserves the flavor of that and the aroma as well. And, also, I've been using this for the last few weeks, and the amount of weed that I use has also gone down. I am using less weed throughout the week because, you're able to, after you pack this chamber of this bee vaporizer, I get 3 or 4 vapes out of it, and then that cannabis is still usable to smoke if I want to. It's pretty harsh at that point, but or it's there to bake with, or as others might know, you can roll a blunt with it with some fresh weed, mix it in there. There's definitely different ways to utilize it, but when you pack a bowl or a bong or a joint and then you torch it, that weed's totally gone and it's just burnt through. But it's really been interesting to be utilizing this vaporizer and enjoy the flavor as much as I have, and also be using less cannabis throughout the week so that my supply's lasting a little bit longer. There's just a lot of benefits to it, and I'm enjoying it as a connoisseur. I'm enjoying this experience of the consumption much better. So I'll share those things, and I'll go ahead and share the Homegrown Cannabis Co. terpenes chart that I was telling you about. It's pretty short, but it is just nice to have as a kind of reference point. Lastly, before I let you go this week, listener, it'll be a quick edition of
The Marijuana Logs.
That's right. That's right. This is the Marijuana Logs segment, where I just talk a little bit about some issue that is plaguing the cannabis industry. And this one comes from a website I have admittedly not visited before. It's news.kgnu.org. It's an article from earlier this month, September 8th. And the headline reads, "The cannabis industry has a waste problem, and the solutions could change packaging norms beyond marijuana." Dispute with the word marijuana versus cannabis aside, the issue of waste is a real one, and I thought I would take the opportunity to talk about that. I think anybody who has gone to dispensaries and purchased cannabis in a legal capacity, since it has become legalized in different states, I think all of us can recognize just offhand with our own experiences that yes, there is a waste problem, because if you buy it by the eighth or you buy it by the gram, you buy a pre-rolled joint, they all come in their own tubes. There's bags that come, that house the products when you walk out of there. There's just a lot of plastic. There's a lot of paper. These are all sold by different sized units. And I just think that having gone to these dispensaries myself, the issue of waste definitely leaps out at me as a problematic one. This article is talking talking specifically about Colorado, but that state's Department of Public Health, they took a survey, the Public Health and Environment Department, in 2019. They found that cannabis industry, just in that state alone, was producing around 7.3 million pounds of cannabis plant waste per year. The year before, Denver officials found cannabis grow operations accounted for 4% of the city's overall electricity use as well. So that's just Colorado, and that's in 2019. As these cannabis businesses grow state by state, how many millions of pounds of waste countrywide, worldwide, is that going to be generating? So this issue of packaging the different products that we have, legalizing cannabis, decriminalizing it first at this point, is very exciting. But there, admittedly, I think we all know and can see that there are still a lot of problems staring us in the face, and this has not been an easy transition already, and we're not even halfway where we need to be. A little bit later on in the article, it says confusion over what containers are best for the environment and the proper way to dispose of packaging is a problem that touches all industries, not just cannabis, but that confusion is felt at all levels, from the consumer standing by the bins all the way up to the product producer and even at the recycling center. So it's just another problem that is staring the cannabis industry in the face. It's one that, as the article mentions, it faces all industries. I mean, we think of Starbucks. You can think of lots of other, maybe fast food experiences or other businesses you interact with. They're wasteful too, and this is not at all just a cannabis industry problem. The climate is obviously something that is top of mind right now as we see more and more extreme weather events and such, and we're looking for ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and sort of clean up waste and reduce the kind of imprint and all that. This goes hand in hand with it, especially from the cannabis community. The sort of nature preservation kind of goes hand in hand with cannabis enthusiasm, I think. And so just consideration of the kinds of packaging we're using and maybe sussing out what really is best for the environment, that'll go a long way in the future toward helping this problem. And it makes me think of the conversation I had in one of my previous episodes with Michael Eshbe, founder of Packageawea.com. They're kind of looking at this problem as well. They're trying to figure out a solution. They have biodegradable packaging, they have recyclable bags and such, and they specifically are looking at the kind of sustainable packaging, recyclable stuff that is going to reduce or hopefully eliminate a lot of this waste. And maybe if we can figure out some kind of recycling program, imagine if there was some drop box outside of dispensaries, like a Sunnyside, like a Curaleaf or a New Era. Imagine if there was like a drop box, like a mailbox or a library bin where you drop your books, but for your cannabis packaging. And when you go back there to buy your new cannabis products, you could drop off the bags or the pouches or the jars from your last trip there that are now empty. That kind of thing, this kind of system might sort of really help eliminate some of the waste that is being generated and is just going to be continued to be generated at an even higher pace when the cannabis expands a little bit more. So anyway, I'll share this article on the show's social media pages as well. Listener, look for it throughout the week, and just consider that the waste problem, not just with cannabis, but in all facets of life. Any way to eliminate some waste or recycle products, or just try and take the boot off the neck of the environment in any way that we possibly can. I think that's always a good move if it's possible. So that's all I got for you this week, listener. Thank you so much again for tuning in. I'll be back again next week with another guest interview and some more cannabis-related stories and news events and maybe products to tell you about on the Cannabis Man podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is an original production of myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson. Other music by Pat Perez, and logo designed by Vorbroker Media. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe, and share whenever you can.